Okay, today we are starting our PO8. This is I can add and subtract rational numbers. So the last time we were comparing those numbers, we were saying greater than, less than with fractions and with decimals. Today we're going to be working on adding and subtracting them. So when you add, I'm so excited I get to use the red now. When you add, the operation becomes addition. The direction on the number line is going to the right. An example would be 10 plus 14 equals 24. When you add a negative, the operation actually becomes subtraction. And you go left on the number line. So an example would be 10 plus negative 14. Your answer becomes negative 4. So you're going the other way on that number line. When you subtract, your operation is subtraction. And you go left on that number line. An example would be 10 minus 14 equals negative 4. When you subtract a negative, your operation actually becomes addition. And you go to the right on the number line. So an example of this would be 10 minus negative 14 equals a positive 24. So what I like to do when I'm subtracting that negative, I like to turn it into an addition and turn that negative into a positive. So when I subtract a negative, I always look at making it adding a positive. So if we look at that number line, here's our 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Here's my 10. I started out at 10 every time. If I'm adding 14, I'm going this way to get out to that positive 24. So I'm going to the right. But if I'm adding a negative numbers we know go to the left. So now I'm going out this way. So negative 14 goes to the left, positive goes to the right. If I'm subtracting 14, it's the same thing. Subtracting 14, you're going to that left. And then like I said, when we subtract a negative, we're adding a positive. Okay? So let me move the board up. Add or subtract?
I have a question.
Yes.
So on the examples, you had the negative number after the positive number.
Yes.
So if the negative number was before, like we're at negative 14 plus 10, would it change that?
All right, so let's draw that number line again. So if we had our 0 here and we had our positive 10 was here, what was the problem, that the expression that you said?
I said it's a negative number.
So if it was negative
14
14
plus 10.
plus 10. So that means we're going to start at negative 14 and we're adding 10. So it's going to be what we said, when you add a positive, you're going to the right. So you would add a 10 to the negative 14 and you would end up at that negative 4. Okay? So it only changes it if the negative is the second number. Does that make sense, Paul?
Yeah.
Good question. Adding a positive is adding a positive, you go to the right. Subtracting a positive is subtracting a positive, you go to the left.
What if you're subtracting with 2 negatives?
So, subtracting with 2 negatives. So if we have negative 5 minus negative 3, you start at that negative 5, right? But we're subtracting a negative. Whenever you subtract a negative, you're going to make it positive. You're going to add the positive.
You're going closer to 0.
Yes, you would go closer to 0. So it would be 1, 2, 3. So it would be negative 2. Yeah?
Are you able to 7 minus 9?
Nope. So again, when you have that positive number as your second one, remember what we wrote here. When you add, you're doing addition. And when you subtract, you're doing subtraction. That is when your second number is that positive number. So here we're adding the positive, so we're going to the right. So if you look, you can draw that number line on your paper to help you. If you're at negative 7 and you're adding a positive, you're going to the right. So we're going to want to go to the right 9 times. What are you going to end up at? Positive 2. Paisley?
What? So, number.
Tell me what the...
Number 8, negative 4 minus negative 5.
So this one down here?
Yeah. What do you do if you're subtracting negative by a negative? Would that be addition? It's a positive.
So, remember what I said, when you're subtracting a negative, you turn it into adding the positive. So you're still going to start out at negative 4. That's your starting point. But now you're adding that positive 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you end up with that positive 1. So that first number, you never change if it's positive or negative. That first number tells you where to start on the number line. The second, the operation, and that second number tells you which way you're going on the number line. Andrea.
So it's 13 minus negative 4, 17.
So 13 minus negative 4, you would be adding a positive 4. You are correct. So let's look at what it says at the bottom of the page. So let me scroll up. Okay, so why does subtracting a negative number change to adding? Why does that happen? Well, when we subtract, we're finding how far away two values are on the number line. So an expression like 7 minus negative 4 is asking how far away are 7 and negative 4 on the number line. The answer is that they are 11 away, which we find by rewriting the expression to be 7 plus 4. So you're finding out how far away the first number and the second number are. What is their difference? So if we look at that number line, we start at 7. Here's our 0. And then we have negative 4. We want to know how far away they are. So if we say 7 minus negative 4, well, add a positive 4. They are 11 away from each other. Because 7 plus 4, we know gives us that 11. It's telling us how far away on the number line they are. So your answer is that positive 11. They're 11 away from each other. So it's a different way of looking at it. My brain just automatically jumps to 7 minus negative 4 is 7 plus positive 4. But to find out why we do that, that's why we look at it this way. They are 11 away from each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's look at the next page. We've got decimals. Stack the decimals vertically, making sure the decimal points are in a column. Add or subtract the columns, carrying or borrowing when necessary, and drop your decimal point straight down. It is important when we add or subtract decimals that you line up your decimal. If you don't line up the decimals, you're not subtracting the tenths from the tenths. Okay, we don't want to subtract tenths from the ones. They have to subtract or add from the same place value. So when they're written out like this, you want to rewrite it. So I would just go right under it and rewrite it like that. And then do my adding like normal, and then drop that decimal point straight down. So line up your decimal points. Decimal point should go from each part of the problem down to the solution. Yes?
Right, so let's say so next one, 19.5521 and then 17.22. Can you add a 0 to it?
You definitely want to add zeros
Okay.
to your empty places. So whether that empty spot is on top or on the bottom, like over here, you want to line up that decimal point. We don't want empty spaces. You want to fill in zeros as those places value holders. Okay, so make sure you're putting zeros into the empty spaces. Any other questions on the decimals? Let's look at the fractions real quick. If you have a mixed number, first convert it to an improper fraction. Then use equivalent fractions to get common denominators. Add or subtract the numerators. The denominators stay the same. To add or subtract fractions, your denominators must be the same, just for adding and subtracting. A lot of us were confusing that with the multiplying and dividing. Just adding and subtracting, do we need common denominators? Double caution, add or subtract the numerators only. So let's look at our first one. 2 12s plus 5 6. What is my common denominator? Caitlin? 12. How did I go from 6 to 12, Caitlin? Whatever I do to my bottom, I have to do to my top. So if I did 6 times 2 is 12, I need to do 5 times 2 is 10. And then I add them. 2 plus 10 is 12 over 12. And it says, answer in the simplest form. So we need to simplify, simplify, simplify. You have a question, Cole? Okay. Our next one is one of those mixed numbers. What do I do? What do I do with my mixed numbers? Cole?
You convert it.
How do I convert it?
You take the bottom and times that. You take the mixed number times the bottom number and 4, and you would add it to the top.
So I multiply the denominator by our whole number. 4 times 1 is 4. And then I add my numerator. 4 plus 3 is 7. Denominator stays the same. So now I have 7 fourths minus 5 eighths. What do I do next? What's my next step, Ashley?
You have to times 7/4 by 2
Why would I multiply it by 2?
to get the common denominators.
To get a common denominator of 8. So if I want 7/4 to have an 8 at the bottom for my denominator, that was multiplying by 2. So then I have to do 7 times 2 is 14. I'm subtracting my 5/8. What is 14/8 minus 5/8? Ethan? What is 14/8 minus 5/8? What is it? 9/8. So do I want to leave it at 9/8?
No.
Nope, we can turn it back into a mixed number. I can take 8 out of 9 one time, and I'm left with 1/8. So you can convert it back to that mixed number. Remember, simplest form. There have been some of us getting ones wrong on our tests because we forget to simplify. Always check, can I divide a common factor out of my numerator and denominator? Any other questions on the fractions? We're just adding and subtracting fractions here, so we need to remember we always need a common denominator. So our homework for today is doing all the problems on 19 and 20. Please don't forget to check your homework. There's quite a few of us forgetting to check our homework. Make sure you do that. Make sure you have it all done before class tomorrow.